I bought myself a house. A beautiful one, white stone, black steel windows, a wide oak door you could hear echo through the halls when it closed. I paid for it with someone else's money. Not stolen, not inherited, but earned in the darkest, most calculated way I never imagined I was capable of. It was his boss's money. And no, my husband still doesn't know. My name is Emily. I'm 34 years old. Blonde, tall, smart enough to know better, and bitter enough not to care. I wasn't always like this. We were just a simple married couple from a simple town. Ryan, my husband, had been working for the same company since he graduated, loyal, dependable, underpaid. He worked long hours. I stayed home most of the time, trying to convince myself I was still the same woman who once dreamed of running a design studio. But dreams fade. And when love isn't fed, it starves. The first trigger happened during Ryan's annual holiday party. It was hosted at a glass and marble estate owned by Gregory Marlowe, the kind of man whose name drips money. He was the founder, CEO, and quiet puppet master behind everything my husband worked for. Gregory noticed me the second we walked in. I caught him watching me across the room, tall, silver-haired, black suit sharp enough to cut glass. He looked like someone used to getting what he wanted. That night, it became clear what that something was. Me. He waited until Ryan stepped away to get drinks. I was left by the edge of the private gallery, pretending to admire a sculpture I couldn't care less about. "That piece is yours if you want it," he said beside me. I turned, startled. "Excuse me?" Gregory smiled. "The artist's a friend. I can have it delivered." I blinked. "That's generous." He didn't look away. "That's nothing. I'm far more generous when I'm intrigued." I should have walked away. I didn't. Trigger 2 happened a week later. I got an email from his assistant. Gregory was hosting a casual cocktail evening at his private penthouse. A few select guests. Ryan wasn't invited. I went. I told myself it was curiosity, that I wasn't doing anything wrong. But the dress I wore said otherwise. So did the way I let him touch my lower back when he guided me to the elevator. He didn't try anything that night. He just spoke. Told me how he built his empire from nothing. How he lost 2 wives because they couldn't keep up. How he didn't like to share anything. Then he looked at me. Not with lust. With possession. He told me he wanted to show me a different life. From that moment on, it was like living 2 lives. By day, I was the supportive wife. By night, I was answering messages from a man who could buy and sell everything we had 10 times over. He sent gifts. Expensive ones. No notes, just symbols, a pair of black heels, a silk scarf, a bracelet that cost more than our car. I told Ryan they were prizes from brand surveys or lucky giveaways. He believed me. That's when I knew I could go further. Trigger 3 came fast. Gregory booked a weekend retreat for his inner circle. Ryan was thrilled he'd be spending time with top execs. He didn't know I was invited too. The resort was in the hills. Glass walls, infinity pools, staff that didn't blink when I arrived in a different car than my husband. Gregory had a private villa on the side. The moment it happened was quiet. No words, no music. Just him, standing by the fireplace in his shirt sleeves, holding a glass of bourbon and looking at me like he'd already made the decision for both of us. I let him kiss me. And I didn't stop him. I told myself it was for control. That I was reclaiming something. That if I was going to be invisible to my own husband, I might as well be seen by someone who never looked away. After that weekend, Gregory made an offer. He wanted to keep seeing me in private. No strings, but with benefits. He wired money into a new account. He gave me keys to a private condo. And when I told him I had a dream of owning my own home, he made it happen. The house I live in now? Paid in full. Documents in my name. No questions asked. I told Ryan it was an investment from my father's old friend who passed away and left me a final gift. He didn't question it. He never does. But maybe he should have. Because that was 6 months ago. And last night, I came home late from a spa day. Ryan was already in bed. He didn't ask where I was. But he did something he never does. Slowly, intently. Like he knew. Like he wanted me to know that he knew. And that's when the real fear started. Because I think he's known for weeks. And I think he's waiting for the right moment to let it all collapse. When I walked into the bedroom that night, the air felt thicker than usual. Ryan was already under the covers, reading something on his phone. He didn't look up when I entered, didn't ask how the spa had gone, didn't glance at the bag I carried, one I was certain I'd forgotten to clean out from the previous night. But when I leaned down to kiss his cheek, he turned his face and caught me, lips to lips. Slow, intentional. And something about that kiss told me he knew. He didn't say it, but I felt it. And from that moment, everything shifted. The next morning, Ryan made breakfast. That might not sound like much, but in the 12 years we'd been married, he had made breakfast exactly 4 times. Each one was tied to guilt, a forgotten anniversary, a fight he knew he'd lost, the time I cried for an hour after finding he'd deleted my name off a weekend conference list so I wouldn't bother his colleagues. But this time, there was no fight. Just pancakes, bacon, fresh coffee. I sat at the counter, watching him. He was whistling. That's when I started to panic. I went back over every detail. Every word I'd said the last few weeks. Every spa day, every long lunch, every time I told him I needed a break from the routine. I retraced how careful I had been. The way I hid the bank notifications, used encrypted messages, deleted my location history. I had been perfect, hadn't I? And yet, now he was cheerful, unbothered. He leaned over, set the plate in front of me. "I'm thinking we should do a trip," he said. "You and me. Just us." I blinked. "What brought this on?" He smiled. "You've been tense lately." I figured some air might help. Tense. It wasn't the word I'd use. But I nodded, because what else could I do? That afternoon, I went to the house. The one Gregory bought me. I needed to see it. Needed to feel its stillness, its walls that didn't ask questions. I moved from room to room barefoot, trailing my fingers along polished countertops, stainless steel fixtures, the mirror I chose with Gregory at the design studio in LA. He had taste. I'll give him that. He also had control. Because despite everything, the gifts, the secrets, I knew I wasn't the one with the power. Not really. Not when I depended on him to keep the lie alive. And especially not now, when the man I actually shared a name with was smiling just a little too much. 3 days later, Gregory called. He didn't ask how I was. He never did. He just said, "Your husband invited me to dinner." I nearly dropped the phone. What? He sent an email. Personal one. Said he wanted to thank me for helping with a new project. Suggested a quiet restaurant downtown. Private room. Said you'd be thrilled. My mouth went dry. "Are you going?" Gregory chuckled. "Of course I'm going." I waited, and then he added, "Tell me, Emily, should I act like I know you? Or like I've never touched you?" My breath caught. And that's when it hit me. Ryan wasn't just suspicious. He was planning something. That dinner was the longest night of my life. I wore a navy dress. Conservative. Subtle. Gregory showed up in a black suit, smug as ever. Ryan? He wore the same blazer he'd worn on our 3rd date. He pulled out my chair, ordered my wine, touched my hand too often. He didn't bring up work. Didn't mention promotions or projects. Instead, he smiled at Gregory and said, "I just wanted to say thank you for everything you've done for Emily." Gregory raised an eyebrow. "Excuse me?" Ryan laughed, smooth as silk. "Oh, come on. I know. I mean, not everything, of course. But enough." I went cold. Gregory kept his composure. "Your wife's a remarkable woman, isn't she?" Ryan said. "Brilliant. Beautiful. Loyal." That word hung in the air. And then Ryan added, "You know, it's funny. I always thought I wasn't enough for her. Turns out I was right." I opened my mouth, but no sound came. Gregory reached for his glass. "You invited me here to what? Confront me?" Ryan shook his head. "I just wanted to look you in the eye. That's all. See the kind of man who takes what doesn't belong to him." Gregory's voice was calm. "She made her choice." Ryan leaned forward. "No, she made a mistake." And then he looked at me. "I just wanted you to know I forgive you." It should have been a relief. But it wasn't. Because his eyes were too calm. Too still. That night, I couldn't sleep. I kept hearing his words. I forgive you. And I kept seeing the way he'd said it. Not with love. Not with sorrow. With calculation. The next morning, he was gone before I woke. And when I checked my phone, there was a video. A single file. No text. No subject line. Just footage from our bedroom. From the night I thought he was out of town. And Gregory had come over. The video didn't show everything, but it showed enough. I dropped the phone. Called him. Straight to voicemail. I drove to his office. He wasn't there. I called again. Nothing. And then the email came. From his personal account. One line. You always said you wanted your freedom. Now you have it. Attached was a PDF. Divorce papers. Already signed. Gregory offered to fix it. Said he had lawyers. Said he could make it all go away. I told him no. Because deep down, I knew this wasn't about fixing anymore. It was about owning what I did. What I became. And what I lost. 6 months later, I still live in the house. The same white stone walls. The same cold oak floors. Everything pristine. Everything empty. I have what I thought I wanted. Silence. Space. Security. But I don't have peace. And I definitely don't have Ryan. I saw him once. Outside a cafe downtown. He was laughing. With a girl. Blonde. Young. And when I looked closer, I recognized her. Gregory's daughter. They didn't see me. And I didn't want them to. Because what would I even say? That I won? That I got the house? That I traded loyalty for luxury and lost more than I ever knew I had? No. I just walked away. Because now I live in a house built on silence. And every night, when I close that wide oak door behind me, the echo reminds me of everything I can't get back.